We welcome you to the Area Game of the Week pregame show. My name's Eli Blankinship, joined alongside me, Kyler Rowden-Stum. And boy, we have an exciting week ahead of us. We've got Hoxie at Osborne. Before we get to that, we'll get to that in just a moment. We are kind of starting a brand new thing here at Tiger Media Network. Tell us a little bit more about it, Kyler.
Yeah, so the whole idea of the show is to get some of those teams that you don't normally see, that don't have broadcasts out there, or you rarely see sometimes, then get the recognition they need and give out there, because there's so many great games that so many people miss, and we just feel like if we go there and catch those games, share with everyone else, it's gonna bring a lot more attention, not only to them, but just for people to just enjoy good football or good sports, whatever we're doing.
So, in a sense, this show will be coming out once a week. We're going to try to push it out on Wednesdays is our hope, but it won't be. We're going to try our absolute best to get it out on Wednesdays so that you guys can be able to watch that before Friday night. And Friday night will be when we have a live broadcast from wherever we're broadcasting from. So this week it'll be at Osborne. They'll be taking on the Hoxie Indians, and it should be a fun thing. This will be the Area Game of the Week preview show. We haven't quite figured out a name quite yet. We're gonna maybe ask some of our people in the comments section to help us out with names, and we may even put out a poll to see what you guys think would be a good fit for our show. But for now, we're going to call it the Area Game of the Week preview show. So this week we've got Hoxie at Osborne. Last season, Hoxie went 13-0. They were undefeated state champions for 8-man Division I football, and Osborne ended the season 7-4 in the quarterfinals of 8-man Division II playoffs. They were knocked out by Axtell, the 4-time state champions. 4 years in a row, Axtell won the state championship for 8-man Division II, a very long dynasty there at Axtell. Tell us a little bit more about this matchup. What can we expect this Friday?
Like I said, both teams really went deep in the playoffs. With Hoxie, of course, winning it all and eventually ends. But last year, these teams opened for each other, and Hoxie won that one in a very one-score game, 20-14 over Osborne. And that just shows you the kind of matchup of these teams. One thing, though, that is concerned for Osborne going into this match is they did lose 9 starters. That's about half the team right there, or at least half the starters out there on the field. So that's going to be one big kind of thing when you think about going into the future of this. And so only really 2 starters coming back for it on each side of the ball, or at least one for each side of the ball anyways. And so that's one of the things I got to figure out. So Hoxie coming back pretty strong. So that's, you got to think of what's Osborne thinking there. They got kind of a brand new lineup, a lot of see how new talent they bring to it. They know this matchup is not going to be an easy one.
And both teams, lost their respective amount of starters, and so it should be interesting to see how both of these teams can kind of rebuild and bounce back, so to speak, coming back into this 2025 football season, especially after a very solid 2024 campaign that they had. So it should be interesting to kind of see how both of these teams shake out to be week 1. This is usually when you're going to see a lot of teams working out kinks, because some of these teams haven't really been able to work on some of those plays and test some of those new plays and schemes against new teams. So it should be very interesting to see how both Hoxie and Osborne shake out to be in our Area Game of the Week on Friday night. Be sure to tune in Friday night. The live will start at 6:30, and it will be an audio-only broadcast. And we'll be broadcasting live from Osborne. We'll have a pregame show, and then we'll get right into things. And it should be a good time. Be sure to tune in for that. It should be an excellent broadcast. We're really looking forward to it.
Yeah, I'm definitely looking forward. Like I said, it's always great getting back into high school, especially high school sports, because everyone there, they're not there to hire, they're not there. They're there to play because they enjoy the game. And that's what I really love about watching high school sports, and that's why I really want to get this out there, is just to share that.
Now we're going to switch over to the Fort Hays State side of things. The vision and the view for this show is we're going to feature our Area Game of the Week, and along with some other high school scores and sports around the area. And then we're going to shift over to the Fort Hays State side of things. For Fort Hays State, they had their opening football game against Angelo State, ranked Angelo State, that is, this last week on Thursday. Tomorrow night, they've got a pretty big matchup coming up as well. So it should be interesting to kind of see how that shakes out. They didn't really get the result they were looking for against ASU.
No, they didn't. Ending score there was 28-7 ASU, but let me tell you, it looked pretty good when going into the half, only being down 1 score, 14-7 was the going forwards. And so kind of looking back at the game itself, it's they had a lot of big plays, a lot of big, moments they could have done out there. And looked like they were going to bring in a lot. But a lot of the times with these teams doing this, game openers, ASU didn't do very well from last year. They were really looking back here. As you can see, they struggle after everything. And not everything can always stay in the tournament, especially when you run out of gas. And that's kind of where Fort Hays State started failing, is they kind of run out of gas. And then ASU just kept stacking on, did not let them get anywhere close because, ASU is one of those teams, especially last year, they were kind of beat down. This year, they just came back even stronger. Fort Hays State lost a couple of big key players to their offense and defense. So it was definitely a rough start, but a lot of things shown to them that they need to work on.
Well, there was certainly some points of promise for Fort Hays State. We saw Ethan Hilleman was a pretty big point for Fort Hays State, a pretty nice bright spot for the Fort Hays State receiving corps. Defensively, the Fort Hays State secondary really struggled. It was primarily a shootout for Angelo State University, who was able to just throw pass after pass that they just seemed like they were able to find the end zone more times than they didn't. And I think for Fort Hays State, some offensive scheming is going to definitely be in the works, maybe some re-scheming for this Fort Hays State offense as they go into this week's matchup against CSU Pueblo, who is a very talented football team. They're ranked in the top 10 in NCAA Division II, and it's going to be a really tough matchup for Fort Hays State. CSU Pueblo is ranked number 5 going into this matchup, and this is actually the first time Fort Hays State has played CSU Pueblo in a very long time. The last matchup was in 1978 between these two teams. CSU Pueblo leads that series 9-7. What can we expect between these two teams?
CSU Pueblo had their opener last week too. Played South Dakota Mines, won that one 43-0. So they really put out a really promising game to start the thing. But it's going to be really tough, especially when they get the home field advantage. Fort Hays State is 3-5 away. I know it's been a long time since then, but sometimes that stuff catches up to you in the long run. So really, especially after last week, Fort Hays State's got to be able to figure out what they did wrong, watch a lot of film. That's one of the biggest things. Watch what they did wrong and work for it. That's what they got to do all week here going into Thursday's game, is just because if you're not going to be able to get out there and fix with it, the same result's going to happen just like last week. It's not going to be a pretty view.
There's so many factors that go into playing on the road, especially in Colorado at CSU Pueblo. They're going to be at a higher elevation, so that's another thing you've got to take into account for a matchup like that, where you have teams that are going to, be better fit for the conditions that they're playing in as well. So there's so many different factors that can go into this game. I really think Fort Hays State can keep up with them, but offensively they have to get things figured out after this last week's performance against Angelo State. Up next, we're going to move to the volleyball preview. They've got the Tiger Invitational coming up this weekend, and I think that they're pretty ready to get things kicked off for the volleyball season. They had a pretty solid season last year, and they're looking to get things kicked off here at the Tiger Invitational. Tell us a little bit more about that.
And so one thing to note about last year and that everyone really talked about is they brought in a ton of freshmen, and that were really talented already. So now that they have a year under their belt, they've got some experience with the team against this college level area, I think they're going to perform really, really well. And the Tiger Invitational has always been one of those places that it really brings out the best in them, and they really perform really well on their home court, and they just show hey, we're here to play. This is our home. And I really love everything about it. So I'm really looking forward to it. It's really something going to be able to watch, is because they're playing some tough teams too. That always give them trouble year after year. So I'm really excited to see what they bring for it this year.
On top of that, we'll have Fort Hays State men's and women's soccer this weekend. Additionally, on Thursday as well, the men's team will be taking on Rockhurst, and additionally, the women's team will also be taking on Rockhurst on Thursday. So both of those teams traveling to Rockhurst, and then they'll have games this weekend here at Fort Hays State, where Fort Hays State women's team will be taking on, I believe it is Northwestern Oklahoma State at Fort Hays, and then the men will be on the road in Denver to take on them. So it should be interesting to see how those two teams shake up, especially considering the Fort Hays State men really had a great season last year and are looking like they might have another great season this year. They're already in the top 25 teams going into this very first matchup of the season. And then as for the women's side of things, they did lose a lot of players. I think that's going to be their biggest challenge this season, but I think if they can try to play the soccer that they know how to play, I think that they'll really find success in the MIAA, which is a very competitive soccer division. Surprisingly enough, you think about football, basketball being the two very big points for the MIAA, but soccer actually happens to be another very competitive point for the MIAA.
I definitely agree with you there. And you talked a little bit about losing a lot of players and stuff like that. But when you have such a great team like that, like you did last year and stuff like that, as a younger player, you should really be watching as you're working with them and trying to look at that. That's what's really going to be the test here is how well did the younger team come. I know we recruited some people that weren't with them, but the guys that are staying, the guys that were here the year before, how well did their skills that their starters and led them team leaders last year translate to them? Because they're the ones that we're going to be looking at. They're the ones that they set high expectations, have high expectations on. They're the ones that got to meet it. So that's what really is going to be the big deciding factor when we look at this weekend. I'm really excited to see it too. Like I said, big wins on both sides. I expect them to go far again this year too and have another conference championship, maybe even go even farther. We're going to have to see what happens.
Well, it should be a very exciting weekend of fall sports. Fall is upon us, and we are ready to kick off the fall sports season. All those games for Fort Hays State will be on the MIAA network. Be sure to check those out. And, of course, the area game of the week, we talked about that earlier in the show. Be sure to get on the Tiger Media Network YouTube channel. The live will go live at 6:30 p.m., and the game will start at 7. We'll have a pregame show before that. It should be an exciting weekend for both Tiger Media Network along with Fort Hays State. We're really looking forward to it. Thank you all for tuning in to our very first Area Game of the Week preview show. My name is Eli Blankinship, joined alongside me, Kyler Rowden-Stum. Thank you all for tuning in, and we will see you all Friday night.